Well, here we are for the first meeting of the gathering at Todos Santos. We're starting off with a beautiful, small and intimate group of friends who have come down here to engage with me about the books I've written and some other ideas. I'm very much looking forward to these conversations. The world of a writer is a lonely one. It's just you and the keyboard. And so to have a chance to discuss these things with people who have read my ideas and can give me their impressions is really a privilege. So I'd like to begin by having each one of you just introduce yourself, say where you came from, and maybe what you're hoping to accomplish here. Start with you, Mike.
My name's Mike Block. I found your space on the Bad Gap interview. I haven't watched one for like a year or two, but I watched yours. I just skimmed it and I watched it. But it just shifted something to me because I was on that path for the last couple of years, spiritual seeking and trying to find that. It just cut through everything I thought I was believing, and it anchored me in myself. And so then I read your book and did more, 1,000 things. And then just almost done with your don't. And I just like the way you articulate and kind of scrub all these crazy ideas and bring it to more of a nucleus that resonates with this common sense understanding. And just the way all your arguments, the way you circle them in all the books, is the same ones kind of, but you hit it from so many different angles. You can't miss it. For at least it's just beautiful to watch. And then to go from what I thought you were kind of angry to how beautiful you're just holding to your truth. So I just wanted to come out here and just sit around and meet like-minded people and just share that experience.
Well, thanks for that. It's a very good observation because that was my intention. I realized that different people have different ways of looking at the world. And so I wanted to take these basic ideas and circumambulate them so that maybe people who couldn't understand one angle would get it from the next chapter. And I think that's what I hear you saying.
It worked. And some of those teachers I've been with too, so it was just good that I had no other experience that was leaving me more empty than full. So just a chance to see why and then look at it for myself. It's just perfect. It's beautiful. Now where it goes, I don't know. I'm just take the next step and be present and no expectation and just be alive and well. And who knows? It's beautiful.
Oh, thank
I feel
you.
more alive.
Hi, I'm Julia. I live in Barcelona, and I was kind of an avid seeker. And watched your interview on Bad Gap, and already from that point, I lost interest in seeking outside of myself, and so I ordered your book and got your book, and that kind of. After reading the book, I felt alone for the first time in my life, just alone, fine in my body, which was something that I really needed, because I'd been denying life in the body. And I just started getting comfortable with being me, and that's a process that's continuing. There are parts of me still coming home from faraway reaches. I don't know where I left them. And they're coming home little by little and being included in just simply being here, which, thank you, Robert.
Oh, you're most welcome. I love hearing that. That's very beautiful. It's touching to think that some words from me could do that. Looks like you're next, Mickey, if you'd like to speak.
Yeah, my name is Michael. I come from Austria and I live in Vienna. And I read your book, The 10,000 Things, and I read it really slowly because I'm not used to read books since a few years. And I come from a world where I used to take a lot of psychedelics and build up like a shamanic worldview, and I really like that. And when I read your book, I realized that all these things that were like my world, they were like belief systems and not the actual experience which I had. And that really, really touched me, because it didn't make me feel empty, but able to reconnect to just the experience. And reading the book by itself was like a psychedelic experience for me, really. So
We may need a warning label on the back cover.
yeah, and now I'm reading your second book,
Yes.
and I really enjoy it because it gives more detail to your view, and your clarity is so good to experience.
Well, I
reading.
think the two books are really different. The 10,000 Things was a kind of deconstruction of spirituality, where I made a claim to be awake, which is an audacious claim, after all, to just say such a thing. And then went on to say, this is not, being awake is not what all these gurus are telling you it is, where suddenly you're just at one with the universe or whatever. It's not really like that. In my experience, it's not really like that. It's still a human experience. You don't transcend being human. You have all the same feelings of sexuality and closeness and desire and all that's still there. Because I think a lot of people expect that when they awaken, all their problems will just disappear and there won't be any of that. So that's what that book was about. Depending on No Thing is more of a reflection on the world as I see it. World of, everyday world, a lot of it. Social problems, what's going on culturally, from the point of view of someone who's not identified with any of that and can observe it. That's how I saw that book. And finally, in the last chapter, which Mike hasn't gotten to yet, but you will, I kind of laid out a vision for how I cope with all of this by invoking Albert Camus and his idea of Sisyphus pushing a boulder up a hill, never quite getting it to the top because it always rolls down again. And in the face of that frustration, which I think we're all subject to in our lives, in our emotional lives especially, you know, you want to be in love and you meet someone, but you can't quite, it's never perfect, you know. There's always a fly in the ointment, you know. And how does one deal with that? And the way that Camus deals with it, which really works for me, is yes, it's very hard to push this thing up the hill, particularly because you understand that you're never going to get it to the top. You've been damned. But when it rolls back down and you have to walk down and get it again, that entire walk downhill is beautiful. You're walking downhill and there's no stone, there's no boulder. So that's when you get to enjoy life. And I think that's really what it's like. I mean, even I had this accident and broke my back, and it was pretty miserable. A lot of that time was miserable. And yet, there were these times walking downhill, even so, where I was really happy, in pain and happy. And I think there's really a lesson in that for all of us, that we can be open to our experience. We don't have to transcend it. We can just be with it. So, is that, yes? Mm-hmm.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm very affected and moved by everything that I've read, and in conversations that you respond to and the things that other people say, and I don't really know anything or any answers, but I love reading all kinds of books and philosophy and religious material and self-help, and it is all so much bullshit, and people, yogis, and all of these people that claim to be this and that, you wake up another day and you have, like you said, you have these battles again. I think they get stuck when they claim to be something, or someone teach something, they get stuck in this idea that they are this and they have to maintain this level and their teaching, and they are actually get lost again themselves. I think we're constantly getting lost and found. I find myself sometimes when I'm living the most in the moment and enjoying the breeze and the wind, and you seem to be able to capture that in your words beautifully, and I have trouble even making it to come out of my mouth to explain to my boyfriend or a friend of mine who I'm going to listen to and how profoundly affected I am by your words that make so much sense to me. And it's really hard to keep the ego out of it. And you know, you're sitting here and facing us, but it's incredible and I appreciate it so deeply. And it speaks to me more than everything I've read put together, because it puts it all together. It says, you know, nobody really knows. And it's beautiful that we all just don't really know.
Oh, thank you. That's really beautiful. Very well said. And I think that's the essence of what I have to say. We're all just human here. And we're never going to get over it. So we may as well just dig in and enjoy what we can and endure the rest. I think that's the idea. At least that's how I've been managing to get by. Yeah. How about you, Marcus?
Yeah, for me, I'm also very happy. I'm here again. For me, it's the second time. And right now I would like to mention something that I was talking to Michael about yesterday, and it's the criticism of some people that have read the 10,000 things but have not appreciated it, because for example they say the only thing there is practicality in this human life, because everything you ask about it leads to a dead-end street. Because everything, if you question things spiritually or in terms of the ego, you always end up in a chaos and in conjecture. So it doesn't make any sense to talk about this stuff or think about it. And they end up in a situation where I think they read Karl Popper. So it's only about utility and practicality, but for me that is like missing the point, and this is so hard to explain to, let's say, the generation above me, my parents or so, parents of my girlfriend, because practicality is true. This is a good approach, but there's like one flag I think in this stream, and this is the I, the identification with yourself as a persona, and I think this needs to be addressed. Like I had a lot of problems without like addressing. It has to be addressed, and so for me, what happened is I basically stopped identifying from my classic upbringing. I stopped identifying as being this thing, but instead I started denying it, and fall back into my identity. And then I realized, oh my God, no, I have to deny it. I have to deny it. But when I came in touch with your work, then I started to be able to like reconcile these things, that the things that happen, they are me, but I still don't need to identify in the old school way. And for this, I'm very thankful. I don't know if you can understand me, what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm. So say more about trying to get your parents to understand. What is it that you want them to understand?
I think that there's a certain type of suffering that is not necessary. I think always when I read your text, I think you're dealing with a lot of spiritual people. But for me, I'm embedded in a context of rational people and utilitarian people. And for me, those are more a problem than spiritual people. And it's hard for me to, like, I can dismantle their stuff. But
So is this Austrian culture? Yes.
I'm not sure. I mean, what Marcus maybe means, because Marcus translated your book into German, and my mother is always curious what I'm up to and what I'm into it, and we have a good conversation actually. And I told her we have this book now, which I told you about, which was so good to read in German, and then she read like just a few things, and then she said, I'm not sure if I'm ready for it. I don't want to read it. And I know exactly why she doesn't want to read it, because she's like caught up and doesn't want to leave that place, because it's for a safe spot, and I respect it. But somehow there is a gunpowder in your book.
Well, I used to speak with my mother about these ideas. She and I were really good friends. She passed away earlier this year, at the beginning of the year. I would visit her. She lived in New York, and I'd go up there every now and then and spend a week with her and discuss these things with her. And at first, she would debate them with me and couldn't quite accept what I was saying. But after she read the 10,000 Things, she got it and really loved the book and started buying copies for her friends and making an argument for it. So there's always a chance of getting through. You have to just persist. Because it's great to be friends with your mom. There's nothing better, really. It's good for you. Very good. So, well, thank you for that. And Kirsten, what do you have to say?
I'm from London, and I think we both connected on Facebook. I was trying to think. I think it's like 2000.
Can I ask you to speak up a little? I want you all to know my hearing is deteriorating.
Yeah, no problem. So I think we connected on Facebook maybe 2014, around 2015. It was before the 10,000 Things.
Yes.
And I don't know how I came across the page, but for me, you know, I've said it before, your mind was like a razor, having done like 20 years of spiritual activities, and it really got me off my magical thinking. You know, I learned all these things about confirmation bias, about magical thinking, what I was doing that was keeping me just going round and round and round in circles. And I just loved your photography as much as your words, because your photography for me is as important as your words. That's why I love the 10,000 Things. Those pictures, they speak in a way without language. And for me, this is very direct. There's something that just went straight to my heart, and really, I just couldn't keep believing any of the bullshit beliefs that I had, and it was pretty amazing. And that's why I wanted to come, because I wanted to put respect to you, that you changed the way that I think, and I'm stubborn, so you know, it's not easy, but it was just like pow. And you know, we've talked about other things online. I think that magical thinking and the searching it's different for different people. It was a kind of protection, not feeling enough, or thinking there's something more, being very striving in personality.
Yes.
And actually, to know that it's okay, it's like Julio said, to know that you're okay, you're fine, that to accept yourself like that is a beautiful thing. And I'm no longer having ideas about my life has to go in this direction. I just feel like it's good to be alive. And it's good to feel the wind, and it's good to feel the sun, and it's good to make connections with people. Like, what more do we want? It's made things very simple for me. Yeah. So the second book, I was like, great, you've written a second book, that's wonderful, but it was just there in that photography for me.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's just so beautiful.
Yeah, I feel that you and I have come to an understanding through mutual correspondence that that's very good. I think people are attracted to magical thinking and religion because it's really hard to be alive. It just is. Even if you're fortunate, which all of us are. I mean, after all, we had the resources to come here and we're all well fed and the rest of it. We're not living in a war zone, we're not starving, we have clean water to drink and a bed to sleep in and all of this. But even with all that, there's still anxiety and depression and grief and worry and all of these things. And I think people look for a magical solution, and there isn't one. These things have to be lived out. There's just no solution to it. And my critique of spirituality is that there's part of it, it's okay. There's a small slice of it that really is okay. But most of it is a promise that can never be fulfilled. And so people can get lost for years thinking if I just get to the next level, then the anxiety will go away, or I won't crave what I don't have. And that really never happens. People can say, I sat in a cave for 37 years and this is what I've accomplished. Really? What about the 37 years in solitary confinement? What was that like? You know, you missed your youth. You missed.
Absolutely.
So, in service of what? Well, celibacy, enforced celibacy is another one of those things. People really imagine that if they abstain from sex, that will make them they'll be on a higher floor.
Yeah.
Well, they've missed out one of the.
Absolutely.
Yes, it's one of the best things we have going for us, with all its complications. Katanya's there. I won't ask her to speak, but
Yeah, I don't need to speak. But I do want to say I'm delighted that you're all here. I'm really delighted to see you, to finally meet you, a lot of you, most of you. It's joy to be here. And I'm really, really very happy for my sidekick, my beloved, my one and only, forever and ever, as long as that may be, Joe. I'm delighted for him. I'm delighted, absolutely thrilled that you're all here to be with him. It fills something in my heart. It's just
thank you, Katanya.
no words to describe it, but I'm so happy for you.
So see, if I'd gone on that celibacy kick, we never would have met.
You wouldn't stay together.
No, we wouldn't have stayed together very long. Although the broken back has gotten in the way a bit. But I'm coming back. I really am. I intend to come back. Yeah. Well, that's really beautiful. There's no naysayers here. We should have imported some. I do have quite a few. I get a lot of strange reviews of my books and strange messages from people who can't tolerate what I have to say.
A friend of mine criticizing your work. I think he read the book, and I was asking him, what is it? What do you think about the book? And he said, it's dangerous. You know, I think, he said, Robert is just crazy and doesn't know what to do. And for me, I thought about it. And he's like in a really weird condition, which is treated by lots of doctors and medication and stuff. And he's suicidal from time to time. And he said, like, he feels like if people read this book, certain kind of people, they could live this life, because it seems what he perceived of the book is like letting them go of clinging to be alive, but just kill themselves.
Oh, nihilism. That's not.
I didn't quite follow. It made him feel suicidal?
No, he said it could make people
He
feel
could
sick.
make. He thinks that it could make people be suicidal.
Well, I think that's true.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one thing that I've taken into account in replying to people's questions. I've tried to make, and this is difficult because these things are just come to me as written word online. When you sit with someone, it's easier to make an assessment. But sometimes people ask me questions, and they're really desperate. And if I would say to someone like that, you know, you're going to die, you have to deal with that, that might actually hurt that person. So that's been a challenge to me, frankly, not so much in writing a book, but in answering questions, written questions. It's not always easy to determine what the real question is. There's a question, but then there's a question inside of the question. And if that question is, how do I go on with this? I would not want to be discouraging. So, I mean, I'll very cavalierly, I'll say something like, this is just a spinning wheel anyway, it doesn't have to continue a moment more. I feel that way about myself. Not that I want to die, I have a lot to live for, but if someone told me now, you have 1 second to live, I'd be fine with that. It's been a great life, and you know, everybody has to check out sometime. And I'd be avoiding a lot of rehab. So, but you see, that's a very difficult idea to put out there into the world, because a lot of what we're taught is you mustn't die. You must survive, whatever it takes. You can't just roll over and die, yes? So, I don't know where I'm going with this.
Yeah, but you know, in your book, you know, when you're reading it, you also put out there that it's possible that all we are is perceptions, feelings, and thought, and if you're, it's transient, so if you move with that, it's all life-giving, you know, and it's life-affirming. I think, when I read, I just see life-affirming. If that makes sense.
I see it more positive also.
Yeah.
I see it like more lives saved and more joy experienced through reading that.
Yep.
Liberation, instead of going through that wheel of so much blah that just doesn't make sense unless you just start to believe it. So it's kind of a saving thing, but I could see how someone could see the opposite. There's many ways to see it.
Yes, everybody has a point of view, you know.
I think for some people it's challenging if maybe they've dedicated their whole life to some kind of path that was very like, and now I'm on this level, and now I'm on this level. I think some people are so invested in what they've done that they will not let go. Otherwise, they may feel. I mean, and they may feel like, what have I done? I mean, I would just be. That's the way it went anyway. But I think, there are some people that.
Well, I've run into that a lot when I've critiqued one teacher or another by name. All the people who thought they're following this teacher, suddenly I'm a criminal because I've expressed my view, and it's not as if my, you know. Yeah, so you know, how could you dare do that? Are you putting yourself above, and then you fill in the blank? No, I'm not. I'm just expressing how I see it. I'm not putting myself above anybody. It's not, doesn't work that way.
No. And in a weird way, even though you're, you know, expressing impermanence and no self and the illusion of free will, you're also somehow saying, don't put anyone above you. Take responsibility for yourself. The two things are going hand in hand. So I think.
Yes, never put anyone above you. It's a capital mistake. It really is. You're the only one who has access to your actual feelings and ideas. You can hear the words of someone else, but you don't know where those words are really coming from. A lot of what I see in the spiritual teaching world is parroting. They've heard Nisargadatta said this, or Ramana Maharshi said it, so it must be true. And then they got the script, and they can just repeat that. And it's that may feel good, but it leaves one's real questions unaddressed, because our real questions are only known to ourselves, and we can never really explain them to another person. We can try and try in words or in some art project or whatever it is, but when it comes right down to it, no one will ever know who you are. I mean, Katanya and I have been together for 45 years, 44 years, something like that. We know each other really well, but she has a secret heart that I will never understand, and no matter how determined.
Igualmente.
Yes, that's correct, right?
Yeah, I guess so. Although your writings and everything, these are things that you have discussed with me over many, many years, before they were totally distilled in the form that they are now. When you were younger, when we first met, you asked me to marry you. It was like, could you live with somebody who's might be going this way and that, and dealing with going into a different world sometimes that you might not be willing to go into at any moment. And I said, of course. And he said, will you marry me? And I said, absolutely. You know, I always knew, I know who you are. You don't have a secret heart, not to me. Yeah, you know me.
Oh, that's really lovely. Yeah. So I've been seen to, that's it? I can rest now because. No, I'm sure that's really true in a lot of ways. But what I really mean to indicate is that there's a key that each one of us needs to turn a lock that only we know about. That's true. That will make us relax. That's right. Yes? Yes? What we really crave, I think, speaking from my experience, is to relax. To just say, oh, I'm okay. Yes? Ah.
Miraculous.
Well, that's not easy to get.
No.
And no one can actually give that to you.
No, it comes by itself.
Yes, you can read a book and it can move some of the impediments away, but still it's very personal. I mean, you spoke before about how reading the 10,000 Things had brought you back into your body, but I don't know what I said in that book that would do that.
Yeah, I couldn't go back to the exact words that did that either. I mean, if I can't find them, no matter how many times I read it. But all the words in it just go curiously growing in clarity. Each time I read it, they grow in clarity. There's more to them. There's more to them. It's not just one reading. It's very interesting how they work.
And you see, I have the feeling that I didn't really write that book. Seriously, when I read it now, I couldn't duplicate it, and I don't know where it came from. I mean, I had certain ideas, as Katanya was saying, ideas that I've been playing around with for many years. They're in that book, but there's something else that entered into that book that is not me. I don't know what that is, and it's very mysterious. I'm not trying to be airy-fairy here. I don't mean it that way. But I think it's true of any work of art. It comes from another sector that we're not really totally in touch with in our ordinary existence.
Right.
It's like Kirsten was talking about my photographs. When I look at some of those photographs, I'm amazed. I was there. I'm the one who clicked the shutter, but I don't know how that happened. How did you get that? How did you get that, Robert? I don't know. What made you want to? There's one that I just put on Facebook again of this guy in the church, and he's touching the Virgin of Guadalupe with his hand. Man, I was just walking into the church, as I often do, and I just saw him there, and I went, wow, bam! You know, it wasn't a creation, it just happened. And maybe the best things in our lives just happen.